We're talking about today, in terms of this particular panel, is how we harness technology for future skill development. And what we were talking about earlier, which is really nice, is that I think we've got a really interesting mix as it relates to the different elements within both kind of youthful learning, but also very much in terms of skill development within the workplace from different angles. So just introducing Jonathan Schor, who is the CEO of CodeMonkey. Jonathan, I'm told you have been coding since you were the age of 9, and for the last 2 decades in a professional capacity. So if anybody's got any coding problems, come up afterwards. Then next to Jonathan is Ricardo Zetzer. Ricardo is the CEO of Lifeface Value, which is a fascinating organization that helps, particularly in terms of skills within the workplace as it relates to parenting and parents, and taking the benefit of some of the knowledge that's built up in that environment. And will be a very interesting contribution in terms of what we're talking about. And then at the end, we've got Eric Sharp, who's the CTO of Degreed. And Degreed, for those who don't know, is very much focused on providing lifelong learning, a whole range of skills, particularly in the workplace, and looking into credentials that relate to that, and developing our capabilities in a bite-sized environment. So I'm going to ask them briefly to talk a little bit extra about kind of who they are and their organizations, and then we'll jump into some questions. So first of all, Jonathan.
Thank you. So I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of CodeMonkey. CodeMonkey is an Israeli startup company providing an online platform for teaching computer science to children in classrooms, either public schools or after school classrooms. And the way we do it is by creating a full-blown game-based learning experience, interactive cell-based courses for coding.
Thank you.
So every time I get this question, I don't have a good answer. What do we do?
Well, I was trying to help you.
No, I spent 15 years in big companies, and I went through a lot of trainings. And on the other hand, when I became a mother, it seemed to be a big problem. And that was a little bit of a paradox, because in those trainings I was trying to learn exactly the soft skills that being a mother was training me. So that's why a few years ago we founded this company, which is called Lifeface Value. And what we do is we activate life-based learning. So it's a B2B solution which transforms real-life experiences, such as being a parent, but not only, also taking care of an elderly parent, for example, in training grounds for improving professional soft skills. We use a blended method that combines a digital theory and also self-narration digitally with real-life missions. We started with parents, so far in the last 3 years, 6,000 mothers and fathers have improved professional skills such as crisis management, empathy, problem solving, by discovering and using the daily practices provided by raising their children. And they also use a lot their professional skills at home. So they basically activate the synergy between their roles. And we think this is very ecological.
And just to your credit, I tempted my knowledge of Italian by watching some of the videos on your website, which was fascinating. Some of their clients, and they were just rapturous about the kind of use and capability of what you were doing. So fantastic. Eric.
I'm Eric Sharp. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Degreed. And Degreed is a platform to track learning and skills throughout the course of your life. We connect thousands of resources, whether it's courses or books, articles, podcasts, videos, you name it. However people learn, we connect that all together. So in a strong ecosystem, we bring that into one consistent learner experience where they can track their learning, but also identify their skills. And we target and work with companies to infuse some of that data and machine learning in the experience of their employees in learning and identifying skill gaps, and then covering those inside of the enterprise. So we primarily work with really large companies that want to change their learning culture, and bring in Degreed that really focuses on the learner.
Thank you, Eric. So I'm going to start with you, actually, Eric, if you don't mind. And the reason, I think, is that in terms of the topic we're talking about, one of the kind of issue seems to me is what are the skills we're actually talking about for the 21st century? So we all talk about 21st century skills, and there are statements about how half or 7/10 of the jobs that are going to be around in 15 years haven't been invented yet. So when you think about trying to address these needs, what are actually some of the skills that we're looking for?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think we see there is a large spectrum of different companies and their maturity in dealing with skills. There's some that don't do very much at tracking anything other than compliance learning inside of their workplace. And there are others that are pretty advanced in identifying the skills that their employees have, as well as the skills that they need. But all of that is very, it's dealing with right now, maybe the next year or two. And we have a couple that are doing things looking out beyond that to identify skills. And it looks a lot like some of the things that have been talked about today, where it's really clear to identify technology. Obviously, is a skill everybody needs. It's very practical. Beyond that, I think as you get into skills that machines can't do very well, that's going to be really ripe for our focus. I think as a whole ecosystem, bringing new and innovative ways to learn those skills. I think it's going to be critical. So things like creativity and collaboration. I have 6 kids, by the way, so I know and understand parenting.
Creativity and collaboration has been the
Creativity and collaboration. Yes, managing is a lot like parenting 6 kids. But it's actually really, really interesting how the devices have changed their childhood compared to mine. And that means something different when you look at the next generation skills, where you have to focus on empathy and collaboration and conflict resolution and some of the things that a machine can't do very well.
And I think that's a very neat segue into Ricardo, and what I'd be interested to know is in terms of what you do within companies. It seems to be very much about looking at creativity, at empathy, and how that sense of renewal through parenting can impact in terms of the workplace. What's your view on the right skills that we should be looking for in the 21st century?
For sure, it's about the skills that allow you to learn and then learn all the others. So the soft skills are more or less all the same, but the point is we have to continuously face different challenges. This is why it's so similar to having kids, because kids change every day, and the moment you think you understood something, they change. But this is the same for the world around us. So it's a lot about learning to unlearn, for example. That's a big challenge, because the difficult part about learning is that you have to unlearn some other stuff. So it's about
especially when you're older.
Not only. But so this kind of learning to learn, but also mental agility and managing change, this kind of, we call them meta skills, or even we could call them attitudes. It's about a mindset. It's about a mindset of dealing with uncertainty as the new reality. So it's really, I think the skills themselves are not that difficult to learn at the end, but it's more about
the process.
The flexibility of the process.
And do you get resistance to, when you talk about unlearning, that suggests that is a difficult process. So do people receive kind of your kind of structure and proposal well into organisation, or do they think, actually this is not for us, we want something that is much more focused on sort of basic skills?
So what's very interesting is that it all stays very theoretic until you speak about concrete life experiences. So if you talk about crisis management in theory or learning to unlearn in theory, it's very far. But if you start thinking about your real life, your kids, your parents, your friends, the people you work with, but with real daily challenges, then it becomes very concrete. So we really think the key is relevance. It's been mentioned this morning. If it is relevant to you, if you can see it happening, even small actions every day, then it becomes much easier to make it concrete. Because the other problem about soft skills is that they're very, you don't know what is empathy. You know what empathy is unless you think, what do you do when you are empathetic? And then you start thinking about if you touch someone or if you get close. And then, so you need reality. You need reality, that's the point.
So, Jonathan, I mean, you're obviously focusing at a much younger age, but I'm interested about this link to kind of empathy and creativity that we're talking about skills is because, you know, on the surface at least, when you look at CodeMonkey, there is, you know, a skill that's being developed around coding, but there is obviously presumably a much deeper kind of relationship you're building. How do you look at these issues of creativity and empathy in the context of kind of the programs that you create?
That's a good question. So first of all, I couldn't agree more. Despite being representing the computer science company, the coding courses company, I couldn't agree more with all that it said so far about the importance of those soft skills. And I actually, for me personally, I've always seen coding and also math just as very useful playgrounds where people can practice those kind of soft and emotional skills. For example, when I was teaching math before starting the company, I would always ask students, even adults, not just children, to try and be conscious of what they are experiencing while they're trying to solve a math problem. And I think, for example, in CodeMonkey, one of my favorite feedback that we're constantly getting from teachers, that it helps the struggling students to start and develop those learning skills, because we created an environment where the students always say that they don't use these exact words, but what they need is that they feel very safe to fail.
Yeah.
Because we don't give a failure experience. It's just a game that you're trying to win, you're trying to solve, and if your solution doesn't work and you're trying to improve it, you use help from other students, you collaborate, you're being creative to try and find a better solution to the problem that you presented, but you never feel that you're failing, and that, I think, that way you gradually become.
Just on that point, is there a test or any competency-based recording in what you do? I mean, so I can understand the point about not wanting to have failure, but is there also a separate bit where people get rewarded?
Yeah, so we do what I call that passive assessment, because we do our backend does record everything that the student does, and it gives the students real-time feedback on their solution in a game style, like 1, 2, or 3 stars for the quality of their solution. It records the number of attempts, and we convert all the data for the what I call passive assessment insight for the educators, the teachers, the staff of the school or the school system, but the students don't feel that they're being tested.
And I think that, I mean, I would like to kind of link that back into the world of work. And Eric, thinking about kind of credentials and kind of how people, particularly in a workspace environment, focus still very much on kind of the badges and qualifications and competencies when they select people and use it. How do you see that evolving, particularly in kind of your kind of eye onto the market? Because, you know, you must assume that as we can get more able to train and teach ourselves in simulated environments, we can build up competencies. Those competencies can presumably be tested in very different ways. And so what's your view on how that's going to change?
Yeah, it's interesting that credentials are absolutely needed and they're used, and I would say the majority of cases they're used for recruiting and for hiring applicants. That's the prime system to bring in badges or bring in certifications, or this one, degrees. So what we see over time is that those have changed. I think there's been a lot happening with university degrees. Obviously, there's a lot of other ways to get credentials that are meaningful in the marketplace. And I think we see that in a lot of places. We, in our work with companies, we see varying levels of kind of embracing those credentials, and we also see that it's much less critical to have a certification for internal mobility, and that it leans more into the badges and clients lean more into creating their own ecosystem of credentials that is meaningful inside of their business.
And just on that, because I think there is credentials which show competence, so you've achieved a level, as opposed to credentials which show a grading of your capability. So in the academic world, we very much focus on grading people. capable, and yet in the workplace we often look for competency. So we don't ask how well the plumber passed their plumbing exam, we just ask, are they trained and able to do that? So how does that translate into kind of what you just talked about?
Yeah, I think they've recognized, so enterprises have recognized that using maybe a binary signal of either they have the competency or not is not enough.
Yeah.
Which is why they introduce a lot more smaller type of credentials, whether it's a completion of a training internally or an external training, or track them through their own curriculum of getting a skill and then being able to show that.
So Ricardo, what about a certificate for empathy? Is that possible? Would you advocate it? Because I mean, if these organizations want creative and empathetic people, then they want something to demonstrate that they're capable.
Yeah, I think the interesting part is, I wonder why we don't engage managers more. Like the parents who went to our program, they tell us, especially the mothers, oh well, I feel so powerful, I feel so strong, I know so much, but my manager doesn't even acknowledge it. So they are the very hard part to involve. And all these trainings are about ratings, the training, getting the badge or whatever, but then what about measuring their ROI? What HR will ask you, what's your ROI? And I answer, how do you measure that? Give me your average ROI, I don't tell you about mine. They never have it. So what we are doing is a big challenge, especially for Italy. We are engaging the managers, so they are engaged through technology, because I think technology is a very powerful tool to make processes easy. They are invited by the users to point them to specific skills. So they look at the 12 skills that we talk about, and they say, okay, I would like Charles to practice more empathy, time management, and problem solving, because I think those are important. And then when the program is over, the managers call back to say, did you actually see an improvement, and why?
Yeah.
So what told you that empathy in Charles has improved?
Yeah.
What did you see? This way you are training also the manager, and you're giving them some responsibility, because I think in companies, managers are not held accountable enough for the investment that companies are making. HR are scared, but it's so important, and that way you can transform skills into productivity or results, but you need someone else to be involved.
The other bit, just before I forget about, which I was always intrigued when I looked at what you're doing, is we talk about kind of skills and people, but what we forget is obviously, which is very much at the heart, I think, of what you're involved in, is that, see, as humans we have children, and that creates burdens in terms of, perhaps not burden, since I have children, not forgive me calling them a burden, the joy of children.
Challenge, complexity.
But it also takes people out of the workplace for periods of time, and in that time it's recorded obviously that people struggle with building the confidence to come back again into the workplace. And what interests me is then some of the things that you're doing about building that confidence to come back into the workplace. And I think it would be great just share some of the observations that you've seen in that space.
It's impressive. Like we started with mothers, of course.
Yeah.
We started with maternity leave. Think about the word leave. They leave.
Yeah.
In Spanish, it's baja, which means they fall. So words are very important.
Yeah.
They are not leaving. They are still around. They are doing something. And in Italy, it's even happier than in the UK. But the point is, if they perceive this as a master, because the acronym of our method is maternity as a master,
okay.
if they perceive that they've got a way to do a master, 85% of them say, I go back to work feeling stronger. So really there is a huge potential there that is already there. We're not adding anything, we're just changing the frame around it. And that's for mothers, that's very strong, they really feel stronger. Sometimes companies are telling me, we have some challenges in handling them when they're back, because they want to grow, they want to, there is a... And for men it's also very interesting, for fathers, because fathers are invisible. Fatherhood is invisible. And that's another...
I agree to that.
Yeah.
And also, you've got some good example at the end.
It's invisible. It's a huge part of your identity that you don't take to work. So our fathers, they say, finally I can express myself. Finally, I don't have to hide if I have emotions. And they also feel more empowered, especially under all the empathetic and the relational skills.
So, Jonathan, in terms of the kids you're developing and kind of, can you see what you're doing being in terms of skills around coding moving into other areas, or do you see yourself primarily focused on coding? Because the reason I ask is that, you know, one of the comments that we made earlier in the talk that we gave in the opening keynote was really about how the world is responding with quick fix solutions. You know, we've got a gap of coding, so everybody starts focusing on coding, and then, so what's going to be the next thing? I mean, you know, is it augmented reality? Is it VR? Where do you see it, and are you thinking about those changes?
Well, so I don't know if I see, you know, CodeMonkey specifically expanded definitely into other subject areas, but we are part of a movement that's been around for ages, you know, of game-based learning and project-based learning that become more and more present in the classroom as technology became more and more available. And I think that type of learning is exactly the opposite of what you're referring to, the approach.
Why? I'm going to push you on.
Yeah, because, so let's look at coding. So this gap appeared between, you know, the number of computer science graduates and the number of coding jobs, and it created problems for economies all over the world, and created opportunities for job seekers. So you see all those boot camps appear promising, you know, become a coder in 3 months, become a coder in 20 weeks, and someone's been coding for ages and managing teams of coders and hiring them. I know that it doesn't work that way. The good coders, you know, it takes 20 years to become a good coder, and you should start very, very early. And the way to do that is by building on when you're very young, on your inner motivation, your natural curiosity, and not on things like, you know, career readiness, or, you know, being worried about paying your mortgage and finding looking for a quick fix on how to learn something in 3 months that will make you earn more. So you know, that's the way I see it.
And so, coming back to Degreed and Eric, your view, particularly in terms of some of the, not the kind of skills that are being acquired, but the way that we learn these new skills and the kind of approaches. What are you seeing? I mean, obviously, as I mentioned, there's VR and augmented reality and gamification and all these kind of words around kind of ways of approaching learning. As it relates to Degreed, how do you look at the best way to kind of share the knowledge that you make available to people?
Yeah, I think the word ecosystem, I've said that. I think you mentioned supply and demand as far as a large ecosystem of skills and the needs for those skills. We definitely see inside of companies that it's a smaller market, but the same supply and demand need. And as you look at that, it doesn't ever fit one vendor or one place to go or one type of learning. There are so many. We are complex people. We want to learn in different ways, and sometimes it's different on a Monday than it is on a Friday. And I believe that systems can take that into account and get smarter about.
And you doing stuff that addresses that challenge?
Yes, if you step back, we have now a lot of data analytics for really big companies with a lot of employees and really varied tastes in what they want to learn and how they learn.
Yeah.
And so we pump that into a really solid engine that is identifying trends and using different data science and machine learning to make sure it's personalized to that learner. And that's, I think, valuable. And so if you want to look at a company, then it's not a simple one-word answer of this way of learning is better than this. It's taking all of it.
What about culturally and geographically? Because you've expanded quite a lot from your original base in the US, and you touch now a lot of international organizations in different parts of the world. What you just said, how does that translate into addressing some of those cultural and geographical kind of issues?
Yeah, I think moving away, and this has happened for quite a while, moving away from just a classroom-based education, right?
Yeah.
Even inside of a company, classroom trainings were pretty common, and now you see a transition away from that. I do think that leads to a system like Degreed and others who host the content online and involve those in the learning and teaching. It's on demand, and it's personalized. So you can take a group in India that you might have working on something specific, and they can drive their own learning. And then as a company, you get really clean analytics across that to make better business decisions when you're a multinational corporation.
Yeah. So, listening to kind of what Eric said, do you think, and from ways it is the result of all this that we're all going to end up having the same skills and the same capabilities because we're all accessing the same content in the same way? Or do you think we'll still be able to kind of maintain that diversity and plurality that we enjoy today in the world?
This is provocation. So I think the key question that we should ask ourselves is, why do people who are already so overloaded, should people dedicate extra time to learning? I think that's the key question. No? We are so full of stuff, and why should I dedicate extra time? And that's why I think in a few years, the idea of life-based learning, so using the diversity of life experiences as training grounds, is going to win over a lot of other ways of learning.
Right.
Speaking about new ways of learning, technology is an enabler, but you can make it as playful and challenging and as you want. But it will never be as available and democratic and diverse and challenging and culturally transversal and geographically available everywhere as life.
Yeah.
So if we can use technology to make so that real life becomes your training ground, the real miracle that happens is that you don't even have to dedicate extra time to that. Because at this present moment, I'm training my speaking skills and my listening skills with you just because I'm aware of it. So I think there is something there that can even make technology more powerful, but because technology is just 30%. And then we acknowledge that there is a 70% that doesn't need artificial reality or augmented reality, because it's reality. I don't know if I...
No, I think what you are is a call to enjoy us being human and enjoying the reality that we live in, and not spend our whole time searching for artificial alternatives, because we're learning all the time, which I think is fantastic. But as we come to the close of this, I just want to start with Jonathan. Are there kind of technologies or new ways of learning that you've started seeing that you think are things that are worth kind of pointing out, or there are signals to the future which are beneficial for people here to kind of hear about from your perspective?
So, because we're catering to classrooms, the public schools or after schools, I think that there's always a very large gap between the most new and exciting technological, trends that obviously provide a lot of ideas on what new things can be done in educational technologies, how to embed VR, AR, AI, between and the gap to what's actually being implemented and leveraged with technologies that are normally considered exciting, like just laptops and the internet. So I think there's still such a long way to go and such a huge amount of potential to unlock of just leveraging, using more self-paced online courses, interactive courses on a Chromebook, in a classroom that would allow, for example, so much more personalized learning, so much more diversity in the classroom, while the teacher is just a facilitator, allowing each child to concentrate on things that are interesting for that child. That's without involving anything that was invented after, let's say, the year 2000.
Experiential life, family experiences. I think it's key for all of us to step up and figure out with our specialties and experience, how can we bring that up and work together to get there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very, very much. Very enlightening and great kind of illustration of the ecosystem. So thank you. A big round of applause.